UPR, UPR, Six Park Rangers are on the up and up. UPR, UPR, now we're heading for European Cup.
Hello and welcome to the QPR podcast. Happy New Year, everyone. It's 2018. We haven't recorded a podcast for what seems like ages. I'm David Fraser. Let me introduce my colleagues, the guys around the table with us tonight. There are 4 QPR fans. To my left is Maurice May.
Good evening.
Hi, Maurice. Second time on the podcast, I think.
No, it's actually the third.
Close. And we have a very special guest with us. We have Dag.
That sounds more or less like
Dag
it.
Helvik.
Yep.
From QPR Norway.
Yep.
Who has welcome.
Thank
Who
you.
has a fascinating story actually about the QPR Norway, which we'll come on to. And then there's actually a little story to tell you about the final person around the table tonight. You can read more about it in my forthcoming book, My Story, from the QPR podcast to the QPR podcast. But here's a quick excerpt to welcome him. When deciding who the final person was to join us on the 8th of January 2018, we looked at all sorts of podcasters. Then Ian Taylor, who's a great sounding board for us, said, why don't you try Paul Finney? On the other hand, Neil, our sound engineer, and Richard, who sorts the website, were a bit unsure. The view was that although he's always talking about Flowers Island, Connor Washington, he might not be strategic enough to move the podcast on in the direction that we want. And he also meets the most important qualifying criteria around that is, of course, availability. And he is available tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, Paul Finney.
Right, that's what to stay quiet for.
That's what you had to stay quiet for.
Absolute genius.
Hello, Paul.
I tell you what, Shakespeare's in his grave. If ITV...
Shakespeare is in his grave.
Yeah, spinning. But if ITV need a script writer, there you go. David's free.
How are you, Paul?
I would be a lot better if we actually won a ficking cup match. But yeah, I'm all right.
Well, we'll come on to that. Right, let me get the bits and pieces.
Thank you for the wonderful intro, David.
That's all right.
That's
all right.
I am worried about you.
Asked Ian, and he said you'd be good, so we went with it.
I'm worried about your state of mind. I'm not going to lie.
Beers tonight are donated by Gareth Parker. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gareth. That's very kind.
I just looked up and around like he might be here with us, but he's not.
Why did you do that?
I don't mean he's dead. He probably is with us somewhere. But thank you, Gareth, for donating the beers. They're very good, very nice. And anybody that wants to listen to more episodes or is new to the podcast, you can go to our website, qprpod.co.uk, and find all episodes, ways to contact us, ways to help the podcast there. Right. Okay. There's loads to go through. We haven't podcasted for about a month. I believe we've played 6 times since we last podcasted, which is partly due to Christmas and partly due to us not doing the podcast on the last week of the year, which we plan to do. So, where does anyone want to start? In that time, we beat Birmingham 2-1. We drew with Bristol. We drew with Ipswich. We lost to Millwall. We beat Cardiff. And something happened on Saturday against MK Dons in the Cup. Anyone?
Well, I've been to all them games, and that's about all I can say. I think Ipswich wasn't a good game. Bristol City at home, there was green shoots in that one. The Millwall game was a farce. I actually thought it was more a pantomime than a football match. And you know what Ian did on the coach was just cringe. Just couldn't believe he did it. Could not believe it. It was like, I'm here and I've come. It's panto season, so I'm going to be a pantomime villain. And it's like, win the match, then take the mickey out of them. Don't do it before the game, because if they needed an incentive, he give it to them one. I just don't understand what he was thinking when he did it. I just cannot get my head around it. You know, it's just obviously I worry about Ian sometimes. I think that he's in his own little play, and we're just a bit part in it sometimes, and that does worry me.
Really?
Yeah.
What did you guys think of it? Well, I'll bring Doug in here. So you explain your setup. You are in London for a year. Is that right?
I'm in London for a year. I have stopped working. I've always wanted to spend the season watching QPR, so I chose the glorious season of 2017-18, where I could see from the start we were going to have a great season. We were going to stabilize ourselves in the top 20 in the championship, and we're going to go through the FA Cup conceding only 1 goal. So it's been great so far.
And look, you'll tell us about Norwegian Oz as we go through, but I'm guessing you normally would go to a handful of games a season.
About 5 or 6, yeah.
Yeah, and if you're going to every game, you're saying you've been to 5 or 6 in the last month or so, presumably.
I have been to those you didn't mention, yeah, and I've enjoyed it about as much as you have yourselves, I guess.
And do you have a different opinion to Paul, having gone to all those games over Christmas?
The most interesting thing to me was actually being locked up in a loony bin when we left Millwall, being locked up in the backyard for half an hour or whatever it was, and I wasn't really prepared for that.
Oh, really? I know it happens all the time, though.
It does at Millwall?
Yeah. For whatever reason, I mean, apparently this season they've been letting away fans go first, but Swords Law would be that when we went, they let the home fans go first and let us go second. Yeah, well, to be honest with you, that was about as interesting as the match. I thought you're 90 minutes watching that rubbish and then 45 minutes watching the wall. I couldn't figure out what was worse. To be honest with you, I think tactically the place got it better than our manager did that day.
I'm detecting. What's your mood as far as Holloway's concerned now, Paul? I haven't seen you for a month. Tell me where you are. I'm not feeling a lot of love towards him from you.
Indifference, absolutely indifference. I go back to it time and time again. Clive hit the nail on the head last season when we lost those 2 runs of 6 games in Spain. If you had to make a change, there was enough evidence to do it at the end of last season, and you had to do it then. They gave him his whole pre-season, and everything else is fantastic. He ran up and down a hill. He done this, he done that. Have we got any better since Hasselbank is what I would put out to the general public who are QPR fans. Have we improved any? And it's an awkward one because we're kind of still arsing around this relegation zone. We're not really improving, in my opinion. And even though some of the youngsters are coming in, we're treating them like the messiahs. They're kids, and I just worry that we're just going to build these kids up, and if it doesn't go right, they're going to take the blunt for the rest of the team not performing. We're in a very strange situation, but everyone keeps saying, well, what do we do?
Is it blunt slang for like a marijuana cigarette? I think it is.
It could well be. I wouldn't know such things.
Yeah, go on.
I grew up in a middle class background. Apparently,
yeah,
someone called me middle class on Twitter the other day.
Really?
Yeah, seriously. They said, "Oh, what private school do you go to?" And I went, "Yeah, Rathco was full of private schools." Yeah. Anyway, I just don't know. The answer is, and this is what is good that you've come from nowhere. I can ask you and Morris and David as well. Everyone says, "Well, what do you do?" And you think, well, you know what? It's not our job to tell the board what to do. Then you read Tony's book, and you think, you know what? Maybe it is our job to tell them what to do because someone else is. And do we keep Ian because there's no one else out there? His record, if you look at it in isolation, is shocking. We've lost practically 30 games in the time he's come back. And for a championship club to lose that many games, that's not good.
Morris, I'll bring you in here because you haven't spoken.
Well, I was going to say, I think, apart from the book that Tony has written, which is controversial enough, but I think for a fan, you wonder what on earth is going on in the chairman's mind. I mean, what is his thought? I mean, you assume that he believes that he did the right thing, bringing Holloway there to get the club back together, to make it feel like Rangers again, the Rangers that everyone was crying out for, bringing through youngsters and developing them. But the problem is that I don't think that Ian Holloway is necessarily... He's the right person to unite the club, but I just don't think he's a good manager. He wasn't particularly... The football was not particularly good the last time he was with us. It was great that he had a great team spirit, and to be fair to Holloway, the players seem to be playing the majority of the time.
Do you not think the footballer is better inconsistently under Holloway than it was under Hasselbank? Not talking about results, not talking about amount of points. Actually, points, we're on par to do exactly what we did last season. We're on par to get 53 points. But do you not find, we were saying those first few games of the season, it's actually quite enjoyable here and there again. Of course, there's been a lot, particularly over the last few weeks, where it hasn't been enjoyable. But I don't remember getting any flashes of particularly good football on Hasselbank, apart from that first game of the season against Leeds or whatever it was.
I mean, when we beat... Trouble with Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank, it was the same as Ramsey. He was on a head into nothing because he's trying to make a name for himself. He wants to do things his way. He's come in and probably didn't have the experience. I mean, Morris said before the podcast that Warnock came in and the football was awful. So,
absolutely. It was dreadful.
But then I was thinking, as you were saying, I was thinking, if we hadn't won them 2 games, we'd have got relegated. So
Yes.
do you know what I mean? It's kind of like, and that's where we are now. We're just taking wins whatever way we get them. I mean, entertainment is almost secondary to we've got to win games, and we're not winning enough games. And if it was Ian Holloway as manager with that 30 defeats out of how many games and crashing out of the cup so easily, I mean, I like the fact Ian says, it was the stadium, it wasn't full. Well, it was fully open against Vauxhall Motors and we still lost that one. So you can't keep blaming the fans all the time. At the end of the day...
It's going back a bit, though, to be fair.
I've read it years as good though. I'll tell you, I'll never get over that friggin' match. The next day I had about 55 Vauxhall vans lined up on me computer when I opened it and emails of Vauxhall this and Vauxhall that. But the thing is, Ian's not a bad person and I'm very worried because when we brought Jerry Francis back the second time, it got nasty in the stands. You know, we were losing against Preston, we were losing against Wimbledon, we were going down rapidly and fans would turn on each other and it ruined...
But we're not going down rapidly. We are clearly not going down rapidly. You look at our results over
won
Christmas.
6 games.
We won, over Christmas, we got 8 points from 15. Granted, not championship winning form, not playoff form, but not relegation form either. We won more games than we lost over Christmas. But I'm not talking about MK Dons.
But I mean, God forbid that we actually even got into the playoffs. I mean, the last thing this team needs with... I mean, this is the worst thing about Holloway, is we do not want to be promoted with Holloway as manager, unless Fernandes is prepared to actually get rid of him as soon as you get promoted. Holloway is not a Premiership manager.
I don't think he'd worry about that.
And I don't think these... Quite frankly, I think he's a bit of a dinosaur as far as managing goes. I mean, the problem with this team selection, it just looks like a tombola. There seems to be no rhyme and reason to how he's actually managing the team. And to me, I don't know an awful lot about football, but
you're a QPR fan.
They don't.
Welcome onto the podcast.
They don't appear to be being coached. I mean,
that's an interesting point. I think Holloway admitted it when we did the podcast, didn't he? That when he was at Blackpool, he got into these stats things, and he said that, didn't he? He relies on these kids to come in.
Well, I think he overtinkers. I think this is Ian Holloway 2.0 for Ian Holloway. And since his Sky stint, it's almost like he now knows too much about football. And he kind of said that when we got him on. He overanalyzes it. And I think as a consequence of that, that's why he changes the team and changes... He's got a different idea for every half of a game because he's almost now... A, studied too much football, and B, he's got in the back of his mind that people think Ian Holloway's a tactical kind of dinosaur, and so he overcompensates for it by changing everything every minute of every game almost.
I think that was clear when we played Millwall, and Ipswich, the two teams are so set up so differently in a short space of time, and players. I would like him to fact, as I turned around and said on the day, we're nearly in January then, as it were, and he still doesn't know his best team. And he hasn't got a clue what his best team is. And he's still thought in. I mean, luckily...
But is that fair? I mean, as fans, looking at the players that we've got, does anyone here feel they could confidently name the best team? I don't. I see...
Name our best midfield.
Yeah, but I mean...
But even they're not scoring enough goals. I mean, Freeman's now starting to dilly-dally with the ball too much and not release it quickly enough because he's losing faith in the forwards. The tactics that we played Saturday was Wimbledon... 80s all over, just whacking upfield for Smith to them to try and get the young lad to latch on to it, and it's kind of, and then we brought Ezzy on and stuff, and I just think that we need to be really, really careful with these kids that we don't ruin them. I mean, I know we're crying out for kids.
Otherwise they'll take a blunt for everyone else. I got a question for you.
I'm not sure I said, bro. Anyway,
I got a question for you. What happened 6 years ago today? Does anybody know?
6 years ago today,
well, I know because...
It wasn't an FA Cup draw, that's
it
for
was
sure.
my brother's wedding. Happy anniversary then. And at the wedding, we heard the news that Neil Warnock had been sacked.
Oh, right, okay.
6 years ago today.
It's as long ago as that.
Do you think we are further along?
Well, what you have to ask yourself, or I would say, is that when we have never gone above where he left us when he was sacked. That's the highest we've had in them 6 years in the Premiership. We haven't gone above that. So clearly, we haven't improved, if you want to be blunt about it. It's a tricky one.
Don't worry. Open the beer can. Don't worry.
What do you think?
No, I am. We have not moved along, but we have been sacking manager after manager after manager,
that's a
and
good
it never
point.
helps. I was not very happy when Ian Holloway was appointed last time, but that was basically emotional because I liked the guy so much. I didn't want to be around the day when he gets sacked the second time. Hasn't happened yet. It's pretty inevitable. It at some stage will happen. Then the question is, of course, how much of our problem is Holloway and how much is the fact that we have a group of players, and basically then we're talking forward players who simply don't have the quality. Are you blaming Holloway because he hasn't found better talent? Are you blaming Fernandes because there's no money around? I mean, you can't just stand up and get a 20-goal-a-season striker just because we'd like to have one. So when you're talking he doesn't know his best team, to me it sounds like he doesn't know his best forward line, because our back line has been all over the place because of injuries. We have a middle three that's been as stable as anything over the last few decades. But we have nobody up front who is able to convert a chance. So to me it's not about the team not performing, it's about the top third not performing. And as I said, can Holloway coach people who basically look like they do not have the qualities, the abilities that we would like them to have?
But all these players have been signed in recent seasons.
But it's
for money.
also the other thing is saying the top three aren't performing. Well, the top two, one, depending which game it is. But the supply to them is shocking. I mean, there's nothing worse than sitting there and they play it on the ground for a bit, and then before you know it, it's just being lumped up the field. I mean, earlier in the season, it was Connor there, 5'0", trying to control these high balls coming in. It was just frustrating.
But I think you've got to remember as well, we've paid a lot of money for Silla, Yenny, Washington was a massive amount of money for a championship club to spend. The midfield, Freeman, probably the buy of the season. Skyen, equally as good. Luongo,
apart from Saturday.
Luongo cost 3 million. Don't believe what we paid for the other fellow. That was purely for him. He just came as a make-weight. And Gladwin, that was it. And it's kind of like, so it's not like this is a cheaply assembled team. I mean, Lynch cost a lot of money. Smithies cost a lot of money. You're right about the quality, but then what I'm thinking about is that, are we scouting right? Is it too late now to try and get that right? I mean, we did get Penrice and Les down the training ground to work with the strikers. Something's clearly not right, because we're now putting our hopes on a kid who played in the Irish League, and that's a worry.
Well, I suppose the counter to that would be the green shoots, or whatever you want to call it, are there, and it just needs time. And they all need time. And the one thing you can say about these last 5-6 games is all the youngsters who they've been blooding the last few games and earlier in the season as well. So the fellow we got from Blackpool, I know he's not a youngster, but a kind of new signing. Smith, Chair, Ote, if I pronounced his name right, they've all featured. We can't wrap up the Holloway manager discussion without talking about the controversy of last week, which I referred to in the intro, which was a passage in a passage in Tony Fernandez's book, which
That was a Freudian slip if I heard one.
Yeah. Which was talking about when after they appointed after they let Jimmy Floyd Housebank go, and they were talking about who the manager was going to be. I mean, this is what it said. This is Tony Fernandez talking. After we let Jimmy go, we looked at all kinds of managers. Then our head of communications, Ian Taylor, who's a sounding board for me, said, "Why don't you try Ian Holloway?" On the other hand, Lee Hughes and Les Ferdinand were a bit unsure. The view was that although he was a former player and probably one of the most energetic managers around, he might not be strategic enough to move the club on. And then somebody tweeted that picture, that passage, and then Twitter went crazy.
It certainly did.
It also can't be good for Holloway that's been written. I mean, I don't know what Fernandes is thinking of, but that is just mad to let anyone know.
To
let
do
alone
that,
publish
to
it.
write that.
Absolutely.
Is it mad just to publish it or mad to do it?
Tell you what, look, I proofread the damn thing.
Yeah, what, that book?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It ain't good. Even I noticed the spelling mistakes. There's threefold. Morris has hit nail on the head there as well when he said Holloway's knowing that Lee Hughes and Les don't really want him there is not good. Secondly, it should be a board decision. You know, you shouldn't be talking to the bloke in the corridor like, going, "What do you have? I had a cappuccino and a croissant. Oh, why did you bring in Holloway back? That's not a bad shout. Right, 2 sugars, please."
Hang on though, you are assuming you've added quite a lot to the story. He didn't say. I am presuming that that was then a board decision thereafter.
But he's put in the book, so it must have been quite a big.
No. But what I mean is that in Taylor suggesting it. Right. If that happened, there's only one part of the whole story.
No, great.
Then they would have interviewed him, then the board would have approved it, I'm guessing, and then all the rest of it. And there's no way that Hughes and Ferdinand wouldn't have come round to it, right? Right? I don't know.
I think it's naive.
I can see Hughes coming round to it from the point of view that the last time that Ian was at the club, we were in administration. And we were starting a season with, 6 players or something ridiculous like that, and he managed to sort QPR through that. And Hughes knows that with a fine coming, and potentially how big it was or it turned out to be, that the club is in serious trouble financially, and who might be better to do it than someone who has a record of dealing with QPR when we were in dire straits last time.
But then you've also got to look at. Sorry.
Then again, how much I don't know enough about how much Hughes knows about football managers.
Well, Hughes, to be fair, is probably the most experienced football person at the club from this job.
Very true, very true. And a great appointment.
He's probably the. You never see him publicise himself. He's just getting on with things. He must be cheered his own head sometimes. I tell you, I would have done that job. But the thing is, I just think the whole thing didn't need to be in the book. We didn't need to know that.
Yeah.
It only goes out there and creates more diversion away from what should be really talked about, and it also shows it. And I've said this for ages that Tony is not a bad human being. He spent a lot of money trying to make the club better, but his decisions at times are baffling, and he listens to too many people. If you can think of this is only an example of Hughes, Rigg, Redknapp, all them people have absolutely spanked our club for their own benefit and walked away with a lot of money. And the club has been in a worse position. And you can kind of see from that little passage, you can see how easy it is to get inside Tony's head. Doesn't make him a bad person. Doesn't make him a weak person. I just don't know what the hell he's thinking half the time, and that scares me. And
he's so this is just a personal view. I have no evidence for this. I doubt his version of events only because he kind of has form with that, and he sort of misremembers things, makes things up. What I think is certain, though, because you've seen it before, is that he doesn't. Maybe he did, but as a PR person myself, as you know, I work in PR. He probably didn't consult the right people before this book went out, because as everybody has said, there's no way that should be in the book. Now, I have been passed manuscripts from clients' books before and told to check them and take out anything that shouldn't be in there, and I just highly doubt that was ever done. I mean, just looking at the few pages I've seen, there's spelling errors all over it. So it's either not been checked by it's neither not been proofread properly, or it's been proofread by an idiot. But I think this whole problem could have been avoided, couldn't it? Because actually, regardless of whether it did or didn't happen, shouldn't be in there.
Exactly. And to be honest with you, it creates more arguments, more abuse on Twitter, and doesn't make him look as perfect. I mean, one of the criticisms that's aimed at Tony, rightly or wrongly, is he's not hands-on enough because he's not around enough. I mean, Phil Beard was probably one of the worst appointments ever at our football club.
But he built the Millennium Dome or whatever it was called.
Whatever.
Yeah, but you can see why he was appointed. It was more to do with the new stadium and building something that...
How's that going?
But you could see some rationale behind appointing Phil Beard. It was nothing to do with QPR. It was to do with a new stadium, having a stadium that would fund the team through all its other events. Nothing to do with QPR except allowing it to be self-funding. But totally the wrong appointment.
It was done wrong. I mean, I would have given him a box of Lego, and told him about that, because I'm not saying it's Philip Beard, but there was a chief executive for QPR who I will not name, who was dealing with the player, and he actually phoned up the club that we were kind of at war with, bidding with, to find out how much they were paying him. Now, that's ridiculous. you don't phone up the other club and say, have you really offered him this amount of money? Because that's a lot of money, and we're not sure if we should be offering that sort of money. He was out of his depth for football, and anyone that has Chelsea as a password to the computer is not going to do well at QPR.
Did he really have that?
I'm saying nothing.
Okay. We've gone 25 minutes into the podcast without talking about our FA Cup record.
Good.
And by the way, if he wants to sue me, I have no money. Best of luck. Right, go on.
Who's going to sue you?
I don't know. Somebody. I'm having a bad week. Someone will probably sue me.
We lost in the FA Cup again.
No shit, Sherlock.
So, I'll recite the stats that probably everybody knows off by heart by now. Saturday's defeat in the third round of the FA Cup to MK Dons for what it seems like we lose to them in the third round of the FA Cup every year.
MK McDonald's, as I call them.
It's now 21 years since we won a tie outright, and it's 22 years since we last won a third round tie at the first time of asking.
Right.
And I've seen a couple of conflicting stats, but we're either the worst or the joint worst
I think we're actually the worst now. Plymouth was the other one,
in
isn't
the
it?
FA
No,
Cup
I think we're
third
joined
round.
with Plymouth.
I thought we got. I think Saturday we went above them. That's what I was told.
Well, that's what I thought it was going to be, because I thought we were joint last year.
Okay.
No, we're definitely the best at being bad, and we're
All right.
definitely the best worst FA Cup.
We're in the
team.
top two of the worst.
So 1996 was the last time we won an FA Cup third round tie outright. I've got a little quiz for you here, actually. I thought, well, how can we talk about this? The following. Did QPR last win an FA Cup tie before or after the following world events happened?
Go on.
The Monica Lewinsky scandal. Did QPR win an FA Cup third round tie at the first time of asking before or after the Monica Lewinsky scandal?
I would
That's
say.
how long ago it was,
I would say before.
I would say after, to be honest.
I would guess after. Maybe it took a while from the actual things happens in the corridor to the White House until the news break.
Well, the world had not heard of Monica Lewinsky before 1998. So Monica Lewinsky came after that happened after our last FA Cup third round win. Okay, OJ Simpson trial. Was that before or after our last outright FA Cup third round win?
I would say after then. I'm not going to call it twice.
Personally, I think it's after, but it's all of these things are so far away in the distance.
That was before. That was 1995. Hong Kong independence.
Hand in glove.
That was 99.
That was 1997. So
97.
Hong Kong has been independent for less time than since that last FA Cup third round tie that we won. Good Friday Agreement.
Oh, that definitely hasn't happened.
That hadn't happened. That was 1998. Ice Ice Baby released.
That was about 2000, wasn't it?
Ice Ice Baby was before. That predates our terrible FA Cup third round record. Well, at the time we won our last FA Cup third round tie, we'll take that still together, first time round.
You need young girls for this. This is the wrong quiz for us.
I would say yes.
Take that word together. Wannabe by the Spice Girls had not been released yet.
Jesus wept.
Two more. Were Charles and Diana married?
Yes.
No, they were divorced. She died by then.
Wrong.
Hadn't she?
Charles and Diana were
of course
still
of course
married the
Sorry.
last time QPR won in the third round. And Titanic. Had that film come out. Not Titanic Happened, the film. Had Titanic come out before or after that win in 1996?
I've never watched it. I've no idea.
Titanic came out after.
Titanic came out after.
Actually, that's a lie. I have watched it. It was a terrible film. And it's one of them things you think, I know the ending to this. What's the frigging point?
Like our record in the FA Cup third round.
I like
That's
the
a
league,
shocking bunch of world events have happened after.
But gee,
We
the
last
worst thing
won.
is we actually took it seriously on Saturday. The team selection certainly was a lot more serious than it has been. Normally we play the cleaner.
Yeah.
We put the guy from the box office in. We throw someone in from the turnstiles. And it was actually, we seemed to take it seriously. And I've got to say as well, it's the worst MK side I've ever seen us play as well, which is even more worrying. That they didn't come down with some kind of motivation, play really well. They were shocking. I mean, their keeper was petrified. I mean, you know, he was taking so long to take goal kicks because he was terrified to go anywhere near the ball. It was like, but we didn't test him. You know, and it's just it's so frustrating because this year everyone's taking the FA Cup seriously because City are winning the league so easily, and it would have been a great year to get some of the big boys at Rangers, get an atmosphere back going again, get some.
Well, we took it seriously.
We did.
Well, with the team selection,
exactly,
certainly.
and it just annoys me because, like, you know, the club are saying things like, "Oh, we haven't got any money, we haven't got this, we haven't got that, we need to rebuild." What better way to rebuild confidence and stability with a decent cup run and actually giving a good account of yourself instead of just dandering out, sleepwalking as we do every frigging year? Don't even frigging enter next year. Do you know, put the youth team in, put the women's team in, do something. Just there's no point. You know, it's the fact that half the ground's empty is embarrassing. That's how little we have cared about the FA Cup. That's how bad our record is. Doesn't matter who the manager is. It's got to change, and it's just not good enough to give fans that kind of game season after season after season after season. It's horrendous, and the club should be really embarrassed.
What do you do? What do you do?
Nick all the balls, take our ball out the pot, and just don't say, oh, I don't know. The thing
Here's
is,
a new idea: give all season ticket holders FA Cup games, or at least the first
can't
home
do
game.
that
Why
because
not?
the away team has to agree with it.
Rubbish.
That's
That's
true.
not true.
They have
That
to.
can't
you
be
have
true.
to. Yeah, the gate money. There's something to do with gate money. They have to. They have to.
The
Agree.
game money's divided 50-50, so.
You get FA Cup games at Arsenal.
This
No,
is
you
Harry. So Harry, our
Yeah.
engineer, who you
Yeah,
can't.
but I would imagine Arsenal.
Hang on. 'Cause you can't hear. Anyone listening can't hear Harry because he hasn't got a mic. He's engineering for us tonight, and he's saying that Arsenal fans get FA Cup games as part of their season tickets.
Cup games as part of your season ticket.
How's that going this year?
Yeah, not well.
Yeah, but
So there you go.
No, hang on. I'm pretty.
There goes the Finney
No.
theory.
I'm pretty sure in cup games both clubs have to agree prices. I'm pretty sure in that.
Okay, let's assume. Imagine we can find a way to do it. Should we find a way to do it?
Absolutely.
Because then everyone would go, and at least we're giving
I
ourselves.
don't know
the
if they
best
would. You
chance.
know, I know loads of people who didn't go Saturday. Who the money wasn't a problem. They're just sick to death of watching us play crap in cups. And just
I
to be
got as
embarrassed.
far as the grounds, or parking for the ground on Saturday, and just decided against. I just couldn't face the fact that if we lost, I just didn't want to be in that atmosphere. I just didn't want to be
You
there.
went to the match and then
I
turned
I
around.
parked, and then turned around and came back. And that's even after seeing the team selection. I just had a really, I just got a bad feeling about Rangers at the moment. I've been fortunate that I've mainly seen QPR win this season, bar the Brentford home game. But I just had a bad feeling about it. We can't do that. It's a bit like going to Nottingham Forest. I mean, I go there regularly in the hope that I'll be there to watch us win at Forest. It seems to be the same with cup games. It's painful.
That's a set of fantastic records we've got there, isn't it? The Forest record, which I think is the worst any away ground in the league, and this FA Cup record.
I mean, we've got the worst start in the Premier League as well. I mean, we've got plenty of good, bad records.
We're really good at being bad.
But the thing is, everyone's. And this is we haven't really discussed this at length, and maybe we should quickly go over it. Do you keep the manager because you're not sure there's anyone else who can do a better job? What do we do? What do we stick or twist?
But the question there is whether you trust Fernandes and whoever's advising him to make a good selection to be manager. And no,
I think you.
Okay.
I think you don't change managers in the middle of the season if you don't have to. Whether we do at the end of the season is a different matter. My view on his appointment was it was just a shrug of the shoulders. It was why not? Can't think of anything else. So let's go for Holloway and see how it goes. And you're right, we're probably no further along. So I don't think you make a change now. Because I don't
I'd like
believe
to
we're
stick
gonna
with
go down.
Holloway because it simply. I'm so exhausted by the idea of changing around all the time. I do not believe we're going to go down. I do believe we're going to be in the top 20 in the championship. And then let us see who else is going to develop a little bit by next season. I mean, Paul Smith or Smythe?
Smith.
We have an abundance of Smiths now in the team.
We're like a tribute band.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not gonna lift us this year, but he might, and some of his young mates might lift us a little bit.
I mean, that is typical
The year after
QPR,
that.
isn't it? He plays. He one good game, amazing goal, great somersault, which is obviously why we sent Loa back, because we had one already in the bag, and now he's the next big thing.
Slightly over. I think. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, my point is not that I think is the next big thing. My point is, was it you saying that we can't expect the young kids to lift the team short term? Okay, but maybe some of them can lift the team longer term. We do not know that. So for that reason, I'm willing to stick with Holloway because I don't think we're going to go down. And I would like to give him another chance for the simple reason that it makes us look less bad, not changing about every year.
My worry is that he swaps players too much. Like Wheeler comes in, plays a couple of games out. Bright Samuel comes in, plays a couple of games out. Young Smith has come in. Chur's come in. If you've got to play these kids, you have to give them runs in the team. You have to keep them. You have to keep faith for them. You have to build them up. You have to work with them. You have to almost be a fatherly figure to these kids because young Smith has come from back home and he's come over here and it's a massive. The championship is
he Irish?
Northern Irish. He got in trouble for that the other day, by the way. I knew exactly what you were doing. That one I thought, oh, David, here he goes again. David opens up the peace talks, as you do. And one thing I liked about young Smith, and I like it about Bright Samuel as well. They don't have fear yet. They've got this thing of like they'll just go for it, and it's like they haven't been booed yet. They haven't been, and I love the enthusiasm he had, and he actually went for it, and he is actually a QPR fan, believe it or not. He does support QPR, which I find.
Paul Smith.
Yeah, I thought it was a lot of
Any reason why?
Yeah, he loved us during the season we went up and got into it, and he loved watching QPR. So because I mentioned it, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm a QPR."
Which
fan.
season we went up?
Under
11.
Warnock.
Oh, he's young, isn't he?
Yeah, so he's very young. I think then he was in his prime now. And the good thing is he's forgiven because his girlfriend's a Glentoran fan, so he's absolutely fine now, my big. But the thing is, that's the way forward. You were right about that. Players like Bright, Smith, Wheeler, I'm not sure about. He's 26. He might make it, he might not. But I can see why we took the gamble on him and them sort of things. But they're not going to get better unless they play regularly, even as a sub, as whatever. You can't keep bringing them in, taking them out, changing. I mean, Bright Samuel came on the other week and he's played 3 different positions. You've got to. These are kids. You've got to stick to the plan. You've got to help them through. You've got to nurture them. You've got to make them better. And Holloway's record at Millwall wasn't great. It was shocking. And his record for changing teams all the time. I would like him to stick with the team, give that team a chance, because this continual tinking is not helping anyone.
We haven't got loads of time left. Let's talk about something a bit more interesting than what QPR is providing us with at the moment. Norwegian R's, or QPR Norway.
QPR Norway.
So, Doug, tell us about it. You've brought in this array of kind of QPR Norway merchandise, books, magazines. You're wearing your QPR Norway top. Tell us about it. How many members, first of all?
We have roughly 600 members. People pay
600. I didn't realise there was that
30.
many loonies in Newcastle. Newcastle. Sorry.
To anyone listening in Newcastle, I do apologise for David's stupidity. Carry on.
People pay to get a magazine 4 times a year, sort of kick up the arse style and format.
It's top quality as well, to be fair.
The pictures are great. Probably because we don't have any of you on the front page. So,
Banter.
Oh, we better laugh there. I always like the Swedish hoops. So we're going to talk to you about them. Carry on.
What I like is you brought in a book, kind of quite a big hardback-bound history book of Norwegian R's, and you've got an article in there. It's all written in Norwegian, apart from the headline on page 33, which is QPR 6, Chelscum 0.
Superb.
Which I didn't realise Chelscum was a Norwegian word.
It's brilliant. It just crosses so many barriers, doesn't it?
We are trying to introduce it, of course, with language, and I think we're going to have a lot of success with that. That article is an interview with the guy who was at the match. There are about a dozen short interviews with individual members. And this chap was at the match, and the chat we had with him is angled on that game.
Why are there so many members? That 600 sounds like a lot.
Some of us are old enough to date back to the 1970s. I'm afraid that includes myself. I was here first time in 1972, so I have been around a while.
Bloody glory hunters.
We have had English football regularly on TV in Norway since 1969. Everybody sort of had to have a team, and why you end up with QPR, for a lot of people it's coincidence. There's the book you're mentioning is the history of 25 years of QPR Norway. It was the club was founded in 1989, and this book was done in 2014. It has all the games that QPR has played in Scandinavia, to our knowledge. There is a annual Norwegian Supporters Cup where roughly 40 supporters clubs affiliated with British clubs are taking part. And half the book is the QPR history of that particular tournament. It's a great social event. We've had Stan Bowles in Oslo for that tournament. We've had Phil Parks, Dean Gillard, Mark Bircham over for that tournament. So we turn it into a social thing, of course, even though we don't get knocked out in the first round every time. We've actually won it once, and we've been in the semi-final.
Before or after the independence of Hong Kong?
Or America.
Yeah.
1990, 1, 2, 3, something. They're going to hang me for not remembering the year. But I wasn't there yet, so I pretend I'm ignorant on that fact. But, yeah, why QPR? The guy who founded the Supporters Club, he became a QPR fan because he thought his uncle looked so much like Phil Parks, or maybe it was the other way around.
And you were saying before he was 8 years old when he founded the QPR
Then he,
QPR
no,
Norway.
not when he founded the Supporters Club, but when he realized that his uncle looked like Phil Parks. Then you get hooked on something. I was 13 myself when they were at Wembley in 1967. And I read about it in the paper, and I thought the name of the club was cool. So that was my reason to be starting following QPR in the newspapers. Then, of course, the next season we were in the second division. We were promoted, and I thought I had found myself a bunch of winners. And I stuck to it.
Oh dear.
So that's my tragic story.
Do you have a Norwegian team?
Yes, I am from Trondheim. So Rosenborg is my local team.
And do you see Rosenborg more or QPR more in a typical season?
I see QPR more because I haven't lived in Trondheim for quite a number of years, and I have been commuting more to see QPR in London and England than I have to my hometown to see my local team. So I've definitely seen QPR a lot more. I've been to, well, before this season, I've been to something like 100 games, and then it's, what is it by now? 25 more, something like that.
Great.
It reminds me, there's a fella at Ipswich, not trying to steal your thunder here, by the way, and he'd come from China, and I think the two games he picked was Ipswich and Millwall.
Didn't see if score.
It's pure sod.
Well, welcome. How can people follow you, get in touch? I'm presuming you're on Twitter.
We are on qpr.no. That's the easiest way to find us. It's fairly easy to remember for most people. You, of course, need a minimum of language skill in Norwegian to navigate around the site.
Right. Or we go on Chrome, via Google Chrome, and we click translate, and then we're fine.
I'm really upset. I'm really upset we didn't get you on the podcast earlier, because you could have taught me Norwegian when I was over there for how much is a pound, and then how much again in a, how much is a pound? 15 quid. Near enough. In some parts of Oslo for a pound.
15 quid. You found a cheap shop then.
I nearly shat myself, honestly.
That's nice.
I'll tell you. And that was before you drank it. It's very... I mean, I'm presuming you watch games in Norway and you stick to water.
You're presuming wrong.
Oh, at them prices? But it's fantastic because, I mean...
You can see why it's cheaper to fly to London to watch QPR than it is to actually stay there and drink.
But the Wetherspoons, it's cheaper to get a drink every day. I'll tell you one thing, though, it is pretty damn impressive when you boys are walking down, and girls were walking down the road in your Norwegian colours, the Norwegian flags up. It kind of makes... Because we'll be sitting here today, and I've been quite negative, I can't say about anybody else, about QPR, this, that, the other, I'm moaning. These guys make such a journey to come over here, make such a pilgrimage to the home. And it makes me feel sad that I'm always so bloody miserable. I apologise for that, because you guys inspire so many of us, and you should always be doing that. And I'm just sorry that you chose this year to follow QPR, but it's a shame you didn't do it in 2010.
Yeah, we have this season we have 14 season tickets. We have 18 in the Premier League. In the Premier League, we would have close to 30 people regularly at home matches. There's not quite that much in the Championship, of course, but we have, as I said, 14 seats. We fill 75% on average this year.
That's not bad going, is it?
No, it's not so bad. It's
more than half the seats around near me.
Yeah. It's, of course, easier for people to find their own tickets in the Championship, but we have still been hanging on to our season tickets in case we might go up. Ha ha ha. But that's been the reasoning so far.
I don't think
good.
we should worry too much about that.
Okay, we've got to finish up.
Can I just ask him one more question?
Yes.
Sorry, to it. One more thing. Has this thing that QPR are doing now, because of showing matches abroad for Fiverr, has that helped with things that you can actually watch as well?
Don't ask me, because I've been here all season and I have not tried it on.
He's been here all season.
I know, but I'm
honestly
asking him on behalf of the Norwegian R's. That's a
I do know a lot of people who do follow the matches online. Yes. Whether it has helped our following in general, I honestly can't tell you, because we have to wait until end of May when we sum up our membership. I mean, we have paying members, so we can very easily count them by the end of May if we have more or less than we had the year before. But it's fairly stable now on 570, 580. We had 630, 40 in the Premier League, so we haven't really lost all that much.
Pretty good.
Well, I actually think it's a great idea having the matches online, to be fair. I mean, the club have done well on that one, if I'm being honest.
Right. We have to finish the podcast. We've got enough time for a quick poll.
I haven't said a word.
Ours end. Which is anything else, any other business really, anything else that you haven't said, wanted to say about QPR. Mine will be very quick. Mark Hughes.
We did warn them, David, didn't we? We put that in the service station. Remember? Your brilliant idea.
We did.
Which was one of the rare things you've ever done.
We
warned him.
This was when Mark Hughes got the job at Stoke. We put an advert in a petrol station. The QPR podcast put an advert on a screen in a petrol station in Stoke saying thanks for nothing to Mark Hughes for everything.
But there is something that's slightly more worrying. I don't know if anyone remembers it at the time when Fernandes was interviewed about Mark Hughes. And he said he wouldn't ever rule him out as coming back to the club. And
I would.
Well,
he also said that Mike Grigg was the biggest and best signing we've ever made, and if he didn't work out, he would resign. Yeah.
He's never been relegated, though, because if you get sacked mid-season, you can't get relegated.
I must admit, that after the cup match, it was the only thing that cheered me up, and that's pretty woeful as a QPR fan. The only thing that makes you happy is that Egypt getting sacked. But it did cheer me up, and I hate him. If Alan McDonald hated him, which he did, that was good enough for me. I never liked him, never wanted him anywhere near the place, can't stand the man, always hated him.
I was asked on my Facebook site the other day, who do you actually hate most, Mark Hughes or Donald Trump? And because I've been posting a few, minor comments on each individual, and I think I'm going to go for Donald Trump now, because now Mark Hughes has been sacked, so we just have to wait for somebody to sack Donald Trump. And it's going to be a perfect year.
Thank you, because I think who do you hate most, Mark Hughes or Donald Trump, has to be the title of this podcast.
both in their own heads believe they're geniuses.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you remember I was talking to someone on the way down today, my mate Alan, and we're talking about when we had Mark Bowen on the podcast. That was one of the best interviews we ever had.
That was also, he had no ideas. It was when it was really going wrong.
Oh, yeah.
Right at the end.
That is one of the most embarrassing podcasts for a...
we've done a lot of embarrassing podcasts.
Even though me hosted. Jesus.
But for him to just admit that he hadn't got a bloody clue, terrifying.
If
any fan.
anybody can be bothered, when did he get sacked? Whenever it was, 2012, end of 2012. Listen to it. We interviewed Mark Bowen, and it was towards the end of that race.
I think he'd had a few.
He had potentially had a few, and they'd run out of ideas. He had no explanation. Right, we do need to move along. Morris.
I haven't done yours in. Oh, yes, Morris.
We'll come to you, because we know you get upset if you're not last. Morris.
The question that I find hardest is those that hope that we lose at places like Burton on Saturday so that the manager gets sacked. I can never understand the mentality of any fan that wants their team to lose. I hope we get a result on Saturday.
Yeah, nothing else to be said on that. I totally agree. That shutter you can hear is Dog taking some pictures of us.
It's fine. My face will break any camera.
Paul, what's your R's end? We'll let our Norwegian guest go last. What's your R's end?
I'm just kind of still... I noticed you put a tweet out earlier on and said how many times I mentioned Paul Smith, and I think this is maybe the third time I mentioned him. Don't know, but I enjoy it when... I don't look. He's from Belfast. I'm from Belfast. It's nice to see a Belfast kid come through, as you would probably see when you see.
It's nice to see a kid come through.
Yeah, from good scouting, which it obviously was, and everything else. And I was delighted that he scored. I wish I put a fiver on it, but I'm the worst gambler ever. And it was nice to see a kid come on and smile and look like they wanted it. And I just hope he continues to do that. But one thing I was thinking on the way home afterwards, you know. As much as we build these kids up when they have great games, we've also got to support them when they have bad games. I don't want to hear any more booing of kids at QPR. I don't want to hear any more groans, oh my God, what's he doing, and everything else. We want the kids to come through, we want them to work. The likes of Donnell, the likes of Paul, Bright Samuel, everyone like that. We've got to support these kids, because Loftus Road is a small ground, they hear everything. And I want us to go back to that and support the kids. But the other thing I like to say, which I think is really important for QPR fans, is that, you know, today is the fourth round draw for the FA Cup. And how shocked are we, and how will we cope with seeing who we would have got? It's like, who would we have got, David?
I don't know. I'm going to have a look now.
Yeah, I mean,
because we don't know.
That's the only thing about our FA Cup draw that's exciting, isn't it? Who would we have got if we had not lost to Foxhall or MK or every other bugger that comes down and beats us every friggin' season? And Dave's still looking, so I'm going to still chat on.
I don't think it's been done yet at the time we were
I thought it was done earlier on.
Was it?
That doesn't matter. Anyway.
Maybe.
Why did... Oh, he's taking a photograph of Harry. Harry's going to be very... his obscurity is going to be blown here.
Dog, what would you like to say in this R's end?
I would like to say that whatever you do, stay till the end.
Thanks, Ian.
Yeah, seriously. I heard Ian Holloway after Brentford, and I applauded him. And I'm a bit shocked that fans cannot handle being told off by their own manager when they are leaving early. And let's face it, fans throw so much abuse among themselves, and you can't even handle a manager telling you that maybe you should have stayed 3 more minutes. So stay till the end.
I don't think it was that. I think what people got upset about was he said that he hoped they missed the last buses and trains home.
Let's not go there.
Am I supposed to get the last word here or not?
Very good.
I'll give you that one.
The answer is Coventry at home. We would have got Coventry at home.
Did you just see that? We would have got a 0-0 draw, and then it would be to the worst ground in the country.
No, at Loftus... Sorry, we would have been at home.
I know, but we would have drawn 0-0.
Yeah.
And it would be a replay at Highfield Road. It's just
the
worst.
They're at the Rico now.
Rico. Sorry, I mean the Rico. It's just that horrible...
You want to say that we played the first game, though, and it wasn't supposed to be open. It's weird how they got a health and safety in that one.
Very quick predictions for Saturday.
No one's listening to this podcast.
Burton away predictions. Go.
I think that I would like to see us win. We need to win, and I'm going 2-0 because if we don't win, I am seriously going to get worried about the rest of the season. We have to win. Simple as that.
I think we'll win. I think we'll get another away win fairly soon after the last one. 1-0.
I'm afraid I'm not as optimistic at that. I think it's just going to be 0-0.
Oh, it won't be. No, I don't think it'll be.
1-1. I mean, we never do an away game not letting in a goal, do we? 1-1.
We didn't let in a goal at Ipswich. But yeah, I get the gist of what you're saying. 1-1 Right, good podcast, even if I've graded it myself before we finished recording. Thank you very much. So tonight's Monday. We recorded on a Monday this week because there's an event at the club tomorrow, but we'll be back, all being well, next Tuesday
Do you know what we haven't
night.
done, David? Do you know what you haven't done? And I think it's up to me, is to thank our loyal listeners for sticking with us for 2017 and being the best part of the podcast, or you listen to it. Not us. We talk shit.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you, everyone who listened to us last year. Thank you for listening to us this year. Happy New Year, and here's to a win at Burton. Come on, you Owls.
QPR, QPR, Clipboard Rangers are